In a world of shifting alliances, silent betrayals, and ruthless ambition, one man rose not by sword, but by strategy. His words shaped kings. His wisdom built empires. His name? Chanakya. Welcome to Thinknova, where ancient brilliance meets modern minds. This is Chanakya Neeti, timeless truths forged in fire, crafted for those who dare to rule their fate. Are you ready to awaken the strategist within? In the heart of ancient India, a man of immense intellect and unmatched vision walked the halls of power and shadows of empires. Chanakya, known also as Kautilya or Vishnugupta, was not born into royalty, yet he shaped dynasties and crafted the very fabric of statecraft that would govern the subcontinent for centuries. His mind was a fortress of logic and insight, forged in the fires of hardship and study. Through Chanakya Neeti, he shared a timeless collection of practical wisdom, rooted in experience and sharpened by observation. Chanakya believed that life was a battleground, not just of swords and shields, but of wits, principles, and strategies. He saw the world not as it should be, but as it truly was: imperfect, unpredictable, and often cruel. From this stark understanding emerged his teachings, tailored not to idealism but to realism. For Chanakya, the pursuit of dharma, artha, and karma had to align with prudence, discipline, and shrewdness. He warned that a person without self-control would be like a chariot without reins, destined to crash. Just as a farmer knows when to sow and when to reap, Chanakya insisted that one must act with awareness of time and circumstance. Timing, he taught, could turn defeat into triumph or success into downfall. The wise, he said, are those who speak little, think deeply, and act with precision. They are not swayed by emotions but guided by purpose. A man's character, he claimed, was revealed not in calm but in conflict. He emphasized that a true friend stands firm in adversity, and a spouse's loyalty shines brightest in hardship. These trials, like fire to gold, test the essence of human relationships. Chanakya observed the world around him, kings and commoners alike, and found that those who succeeded were not always the most virtuous, but those who understood human nature. He was uncompromising in his counsel. A snake may be venomous, he warned, even when it appears calm. One should never underestimate those who wear a mask of gentleness, but harbor intentions of harm. In dealings with enemies, Chanakya advocated cunning over confrontation. When defeat was certain, retreat was wise. When victory was within reach, strike with force and clarity. One of his enduring lessons involved the comparison between a foolish man and a well. Both are deep, but one offers wisdom, while the other only echoes. To spend time in the company of the ignorant, he noted, was to invite frustration. Wisdom, like wealth, must be preserved and cultivated. But unlike gold or jewels, wisdom cannot be stolen. It grows with reflection and deepens with experience. He outlined the virtues of association. Just as sandalwood perfumes the axe that cuts it, good company uplifts even those who cause harm. But association with the wicked leads even the noble astray. A crow in a flock of swans still remains a crow. He taught that if one's environment was not conducive to growth, it was better to wander than to stagnate. Chanakya's view of wealth was also striking. He saw money not as an end, but as a means to stability, independence, and influence. He cautioned against excessive attachment to riches, for wealth could vanish like mist in morning sun. However, poverty too could strip a man of dignity and voice. Thus, he encouraged the pursuit of wealth with diligence and integrity. He illustrated this with the metaphor of a tree. A tree that bears fruit is pelted with stones, yet it gives its gifts without complaint. Similarly, a man of wealth and knowledge must accept criticism and jealousy as inevitable. One should neither flaunt success nor fear insult. Dignity lies in inner strength, not public praise. Chanakya's reflections extended to family and personal life. He warned of 5 kinds of poison that could reside within the home: a disloyal wife, a disobedient son, a greedy servant, a malicious guest, and a manipulative relative. These, he said, could destroy a household from within more swiftly than any external threat. Hence, vigilance in personal relationships was not just advised, but necessary. He believed that the root of happiness lay in balance. A man who sleeps excessively wastes his life, while one who never rests burns out. Moderation was key. Pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and insult, all were part of life's rhythm. The wise neither celebrate too much nor mourn too deeply. They remain anchored, aware that fortune is like a wheel that spins without pause. Chanakya admired discipline. A person without discipline, he noted, was like a ship without rudder, tossed by the winds of temptation and confusion. The first step to mastery was control of the self, of speech, thought, and desire. He advised restraint, not because he opposed joy, but because he saw unbridled desire as the path to ruin. He had little tolerance for laziness. He believed that every day should begin with purpose. Time, once lost, could never be recovered. Even ants, small as they are, work tirelessly, building and storing with relentless focus. So should a man live, not in haste, but in steady, mindful action. Procrastination was, to Chanakya, the quiet thief of potential. In governance, Chanakya was unmatched. He understood the psychology of power. A king, he insisted, must be both lion and fox, strong when necessary, cunning when needed. He taught that a ruler's success lay not in domination, but in foresight, diplomacy, and the ability to read both friends and foes. A single spy could be more effective than 1,000 soldiers if placed with care. He emphasized the importance of secrecy. Plans should be guarded like treasure. Words once spoken could not be taken back, and even allies could become adversaries. A king must trust but verify. Affection and ambition, he said, often walked together, one in light, the other in shadow. Only the alert would see both. Chanakya often spoke of education. Learning was the truest wealth, immune to theft and decay. He argued that knowledge should be pursued from cradle to grave. A child should learn discipline, a youth should acquire wisdom, and an adult must live by dharma. An uneducated person, even if wealthy, was like a fragrant flower without color, lacking essence. He also saw fear as a tool. Not fear that weakens, but fear that sharpens awareness. A person without fear, he warned, could become reckless. But a person consumed by fear would become paralyzed. Balance was again the key. Courage, sharpened by awareness, not dulled by arrogance. His understanding of human nature was relentless. He observed that men often worship the rising sun, but forget the same sun when it sets. Gratitude, he implied, was rare. Thus, one should do good without expectation. Acts done for applause were fleeting. True virtue was its own reward. He warned against blind trust. Even a clean mirror can hide a crack, and even the sweetest voice can mask deception. A wise person tests words against action and smiles against loyalty. Betrayal often came not from strangers, but from those closest. In matters of leadership, Chanakya was unflinching. A leader should be above personal indulgence. Luxury was the enemy of alertness. Comfort dulled instinct. A ruler lost in pleasure could not see danger until it struck. Sacrifice, service, and discipline were the foundations of sustainable rule. He taught the value of patience. The fruit of action may take time, but haste ruins harvests. A seed planted in the right soil with the right care would grow in its time. Similarly, wise decisions bore fruit after delay, not instantly. Patience was not inaction, it was strength restrained. Chanakya's ideas often startled people for their bluntness. He did not sugarcoat. He believed that truth, however bitter, was better than sweet lies. A person should be told of their faults, not flattered into ignorance. Correction was a gift, not an insult. He believed in action over complaint. Instead of lamenting fate, a person should rise and move. The sun, he noted, never stops to rest. It rises and sets with purpose. Likewise, man must fulfill his duty, whether praised or ignored, celebrated or forgotten. There were also his insights on women, which reflected both the norms and prejudices of his era. While he acknowledged the strength and intelligence of women, he also advised men to remain cautious, noting that beauty could be deceptive and that emotional intelligence must guide relationships more than appearances. His lessons often came in contrasts. A single moment of anger, he taught, could undo years of friendship. A day of neglect could undo a lifetime of discipline. Hence, vigilance was not a sometimes task. It had to be a way of life. Peace and power were both maintained by those who never slept in comfort. For Chanakya, the ultimate aim of life was not just survival, but influence. To live meaningfully was to leave a mark, not in monuments, but in minds. A thought well placed, a life lived wisely, echoed beyond death. And through his Neeti, Chanakya ensured that his voice would continue to guide generations, across centuries, across kingdoms, and across minds seeking clarity in chaos. Chanakya had a profound understanding of how human behavior shaped the trajectory of lives and civilizations. He had seen kingdoms rise not by strength alone, but by the virtue and discipline of those who led them. A man could possess a mighty army, but if he lacked wisdom, even the strongest walls could crumble under the weight of his ignorance. Wisdom, to Chanakya, was not only the ability to learn, but the courage to unlearn and correct one's course. He likened the mind to a lamp. The oil was discipline, and the flame was knowledge. Without steady oil, even the brightest flame flickered and died. Therefore, he placed great value on restraint, on choosing thoughts and words as carefully as one chose food or clothing. A single sentence could uplift or destroy. A single moment of impulse could ruin a legacy built over decades. He described 4 types of people to beware of. First, a friend who is overly friendly, for flattery often hides selfish motives. Second, a servant who praises excessively, as such behavior often leads to hidden betrayal. Third, a guest who overstays and observes silently, for they may carry secrets to your enemies. And fourth, a relative who competes with you in every matter, for envy within blood is the most dangerous kind. Chanakya emphasized that a man's true strength came not from his muscles, but from his intellect and character. He told the story of a tree with roots so deep that no storm could uproot it. Similarly, a man grounded in wisdom and self-discipline could withstand the storms of fate, temptation, and loss. Trees that grew quickly but shallowly, however, were the first to fall in harsh winds. Patience, again, was central. He taught that a wise person learns not only from his own experiences, but also from the failures and successes of others. He who touches fire to learn that it burns is not wise. True wisdom lies in observing others and preparing before misfortune arrives. Prevention, to Chanakya, was the highest form of intelligence. In his view, forgiveness was a tool, not a weakness. One should forgive the ignorant, guide the mistaken, but never spare the wicked. Just as a gardener trims away rot to save the tree, a ruler must remove corruption without hesitation. Mercy should be reserved for those who seek redemption, not for those who repeatedly poison the well of trust. He believed that trust must be earned and continuously assessed. Just as a soldier maintains his weapons even in times of peace, one must evaluate the trustworthiness of people in moments of ease, not only when problems arise. Chanakya saw human loyalty as fickle. He advised that people often change their colors like chameleons when situations shift. Therefore, constant vigilance was not paranoia, it was wisdom. The idea of dharma was deeply embedded in his philosophy. But to him, dharma was not blind ritual or hollow morality. It was right action in the face of difficulty. A man may recite scriptures endlessly, but if he cannot uphold justice, his words are like dry leaves, loud but empty. True dharma lay in service, in sacrifice, and in the courage to act rightly when the world stood against you.
He taught that even silence was a weapon. A well-timed pause could disarm arrogance more effectively than an argument. A person who knows when to speak and when to stay silent holds the real power. Noise often attracts attention, but silence commands respect. His lessons also touched upon the importance of preparing for change. Nothing in life remained the same. Seasons turned, fortunes flipped, and alliances shifted. The wise built their foundations not on sand, but on stone, on habits, discipline, and knowledge that endured despite external change. Chanakya warned against arrogance. Pride, he believed, was the seed of downfall. A man who believed he was invincible invited destruction. The more power one gained, the more humble one had to become. Just as a tree laden with fruit bends low, the truly wise lower themselves in service and humility. He also outlined principles of wealth management. Wealth earned dishonestly was cursed from the start. It gave fleeting pleasure, but brought lasting misery. He believed that wealth should be protected like fire, beneficial when controlled, destructive when misused. Money was not to be hoarded nor squandered, but circulated wisely, with awareness of its influence over people and events. In his reflections, Chanakya often revisited the dangers of companionship with the wicked. He explained that a single rotten fruit could spoil an entire basket. One bad friend could destroy years of discipline and good habits. Therefore, a person must be as cautious in choosing companions as one is in selecting medicine. Both have the power to heal or harm. He valued simplicity. A life free of unnecessary desires, he believed, was a life of strength. Desires, when multiplied, created chaos in the heart. A man who could master his senses was stronger than one who could conquer cities. Self-mastery, he taught, was the highest form of power. Chanakya also acknowledged the role of fate, but refused to surrender to it. Fate could dictate circumstances, but not responses. A man of will and wisdom could reshape his destiny through disciplined action. He often said that fate helped those who helped themselves. Laziness disguised as surrender to fate was the ultimate foolishness. He held a pragmatic view on enemies. Not every opponent needed to be destroyed. Some could be neutralized through alliances, others distracted, and some converted to allies through benefit sharing. War, he believed, should be the last resort, not the first impulse. The cost of war was not only measured in gold or blood, but in time, morale, and stability. He explained that a person's tongue was sharper than any sword. Gossip, slander, and careless words could destroy reputations and peace. Hence, one must guard speech as one guards treasure. Words once spoken could not be retrieved. They could either heal or wound, depending on their intent and timing. Chanakya encouraged strategic thinking from a young age. He believed that even children should be trained in resilience and logic. Just as a plant must be shaped while it is still tender, a child's mind must be guided while still curious and open. The future of society, he said, was shaped in the lessons taught at home. His observations of nature were frequent and profound. He noted how a lion rested even when hungry, yet hunted with full force when ready. From this, he taught that planning must precede action. Rushing into decisions without preparation was foolishness, while overthinking could lead to inaction. Wisdom lay in finding the balance. He recognized that enemies did not always announce themselves. Many wore the disguise of friendship. Thus, one must test intentions over time, not accept words at face value. Time, he said, was the best judge of character. Those who remained constant through hardship were true. The rest were shadows of convenience. In matters of justice, Chanakya believed in swiftness. Delayed justice, he taught, was a form of injustice. A ruler who failed to protect the weak lost legitimacy. Fear of punishment deterred crime more than punishment itself. Therefore, law must be clear, quick, and fair. He also spoke of the dangers of intoxicants, be it liquor, lust, or luxury. These, he said, blurred judgment and weakened resolve. A man addicted to pleasure became a slave, even if he ruled empires. True freedom was freedom from temptation, not from responsibility. Chanakya compared a man's heart to a battlefield where desires clashed with reason. In this war, only those who trained daily in self-awareness could win. He encouraged introspection. Just as one cleanses the body daily, so must one examine the mind, uproot negativity, and nourish integrity. He highlighted the importance of adaptability. He said that the strongest trees broke in the storm, but the flexible ones bent and survived. Rigidity in thought and pride in ignorance were dangerous. One must evolve with time while remaining rooted in truth. Chanakya saw failure not as defeat, but as instruction. A person who failed and learned was wiser than one who succeeded by accident. The pain of failure carved humility, and humility sharpened intelligence. To fear failure was to fear life itself. He reminded that leadership was not about command, but about responsibility. A leader must eat last, sleep least, and think most. When a leader grew rich while the people suffered, rebellion brewed silently. Real power was earned through service, not seized by title. He also emphasized the importance of clarity in communication. Instructions should be simple, goals well-defined, and actions transparent. Ambiguity in leadership created confusion, and confusion led to chaos. The more direct the message, the more effective the movement. He spoke of legacy. A man should live in such a way that his memory becomes a lamp in the lives of others. Wealth fades, buildings fall, but character echoes. Chanakya's own life was testament to this principle. He built no monuments, but his thoughts continue to guide millions. Chanakya's Neeti was not mere theory. It was a manual for living, for ruling, and for surviving in a world of shifting sands. Each verse, each maxim, was drawn not from imagination, but from observation. He lived among kings and spies, monks and merchants, and distilled from their lives the nectar of practical truth. He was not afraid of being misunderstood. He preferred being right in silence than being praised in error. To him, truth needed no defense. It only needed time to reveal its value. And through centuries, his truth continues to shine, quietly, wisely, like the flame of an eternal lamp.
The mind of Chanakya was like a steel trap, sharp, alert, and impossible to deceive. He had seen how the human heart could drift into comfort and error the moment vigilance relaxed. In his teachings, he often repeated one message in different forms. The world does not reward the naive, it rewards the prepared. Every step in life must be measured, and every companion tested. He warned that a man must never fully disclose the depth of his plans. Just as an ocean does not reveal all its secrets, the wise conceal the full extent of their intentions until the time is ripe. This was not an invitation to deception, but to discretion. To Chanakya, transparency was a choice of timing, not a constant exposure. He believed that a person who could remain calm in crisis was worth more than an army. Anger was like fire. It could warm, but it could also burn everything. He taught that self-control during provocation was the highest form of strength. Anyone could react when insulted, but only the wise could respond with silence, assess the terrain, and then strike with precision, or not at all. Chanakya respected time as the greatest resource. Wealth lost could be earned again, but time once gone was like a river. It never flowed back. A man who wasted his time, he said, was poorer than one who had lost gold. He insisted on early rising, structured days, and regular reflection. To him, idleness was the mother of all regrets. He used vivid metaphors to teach deep truths. He said that even the most beautiful lotus is rooted in mud. Likewise, greatness is often born from discomfort and struggle. Comfort dulls the spirit. It makes the sword of character lose its edge. A man who avoided hardship also avoided excellence. He viewed criticism as a blessing in disguise. Praise inflated the ego, but criticism, when heard wisely, became the seed of transformation. A man surrounded only by yes-men was like a bird in a golden cage. Impressive, but imprisoned. Real progress came when one sought truth, not applause. In the pursuit of knowledge, Chanakya urged consistency. Just as water dripping continuously could wear down a stone, small daily efforts in learning produced the most profound wisdom. Knowledge, he said, was the one asset that grew when shared and could never be taken away by thieves, fire, or kings. It was the only true companion in foreign lands, and the only true armor in hard times. He had a practical approach to the world of politics and leadership. Chanakya taught that a ruler must be ruthless when required, compassionate when needed, and above all, unpredictable. Predictability was a weakness, as it allowed enemies to plan. The key to enduring power was adaptability paired with strong moral vision. He offered examples from nature. The moon appeared gentle, but it controlled tides. The elephant moved slowly, but its strength was unmatched. The cobra was silent, yet deadly. Power, he said, did not lie in noise, but in presence. A man who could influence outcomes without raising his voice was truly powerful. He examined the psychology of people with extraordinary depth. People, he said, are driven by fear, greed, love, and pride. A wise leader learns to manage these forces, not by suppression, but by redirection. Fear could become caution, greed could become ambition, love could be harnessed into loyalty, pride could be shaped into dignity. Chanakya understood that appearances often fooled. A sweet voice could hide a sharp tongue, a smiling face could mask a dagger. Therefore, he recommended that one must never judge by first impressions. Time reveals the nature of all things. Patience once again was the tool of discernment. He emphasized that leadership required a thick skin. Praise and blame were both illusions, two sides of the same coin. A man who altered his path because of public opinion would never reach his destination. The goal must be clear, the path strategic, and the heart firm. He regarded service to the people as the sacred duty of rulers. A king who enriched himself while his people suffered was a tyrant in disguise. He taught that power should be used like a weapon in a sheath, always there, always ready, but drawn only when absolutely necessary. The respect of the people, not their fear, was the true foundation of enduring rule. In his view, the bond of trust, once broken, was almost impossible to repair. It was like a cracked mirror. It may reflect again, but the flaw would always remain. Therefore, he advised leaders and individuals alike to honor promises, guard confidences, and remain steady in loyalty. Chanakya often shared that the most dangerous enemy was not the one who attacked openly, but the one who sat beside you, listening closely, smiling frequently, and slowly undermining your confidence. Betrayal, he said, always wore the costume of friendship. Hence, wise people should observe actions more than words. He gave importance to decision-making and warned that indecisiveness was worse than a wrong decision. A person who could not decide was like a ship caught between winds. It drifted until it crashed. Even if one failed, a decision taken with clarity and courage taught more than endless hesitation. Chanakya described three sources of misery: foolish friends, arrogant allies, and ungrateful dependents. He advised distancing from people who exhausted energy without adding value. Time spent with them was time lost. Relationships, like investments, had to yield growth, understanding, or strength. He reflected on legacy again and again. What would remain after a person passed was not the property he owned, but the values he lived by. A person should strive to be remembered not for wealth or beauty, but for wisdom, service, and resilience. These, he said, were the real footprints in time. He observed that human beings often spent years chasing shadows, fame, pleasure, validation, only to realize at the end that peace lay in simplicity. A hut with truth was better than a palace built on lies. He urged people to live in alignment with their conscience, for no outer achievement could silence inner conflict. In his more philosophical verses, Chanakya spoke of death with clarity. He said that fear of death was a disease that robbed men of joy. Death, he claimed, was certain, but how one lived defined the meaning of that certainty. A life lived in fear was half-lived. A life lived in awareness was eternal in its impact. He was a firm believer in self-reliance. Dependence, whether emotional or financial, he considered a form of bondage. A truly free man was one who could support himself, think for himself, and stand alone when needed. This independence was not about arrogance, but about dignity. Chanakya warned that opportunities were like birds. They must be caught in the moment. Hesitation made them fly away. He said that success came to those who prepared daily, stayed alert, and acted when the window opened. Regret, to him, was the price paid by the lazy and the fearful. He taught that insults were often invitations to greatness. They revealed the insecurities of others and tested one's self-respect. If a man reacted to every insult, he would spend his life in distraction. But if he used insult as fuel to grow stronger, he would rise above even the loudest criticism. In wealth management, Chanakya suggested division. One portion should be for daily living, another for emergencies, and a third for investment. He warned that those who spent more than they earned were walking toward disaster, and those who hoarded everything lived like beggars despite their riches. He was passionate about education for women and men alike. While he lived in a time with deep gender hierarchies, Chanakya acknowledged that a nation could not rise while half its population remained uneducated. He said that a wise mother could shape an entire generation through her words and values. In business and trade, he advised honesty as a strategy, not just a virtue. Customers, he said, were not fools. A dishonest merchant might earn quickly, but would lose trust. A trustworthy name was like a currency. It grew with every transaction. Chanakya's Neeti also tackled health. A man who ignored his body, he said, was a fool. No amount of gold could buy back lost health. Just as a kingdom needed forts and food, the body needed rest, nourishment, and exercise. A weak body clouded the mind, and a clouded mind made poor decisions. He admired those who took small, steady steps toward a goal. He believed that great achievements came not from rare brilliance, but from daily commitment. Mountains, he reminded, were climbed one step at a time, not in a single leap. Impatience was the enemy of mastery.
His closing messages in the collection were often quiet, reflective, and deeply human. He spoke of detachment, not as rejection, but as inner freedom. To love without control, to work without greed, to serve without pride. This, to him, was the highest state. He reminded that all things pass: pleasure, pain, success, failure, youth, wealth. The only thing that stayed was the character a person built. The storm may destroy trees, but it could not erase the scent of a flower that once bloomed. Chanakya ended his wisdom not with grand claims, but with a humble offering, a mirror for those who wish to live wisely, rule justly, and walk through the world with their eyes open, their hearts steady, and their minds sharp. As Chanakya's words ripened into the final truths of his Neeti, his voice did not become louder, but deeper, calmer, as if whispering to the wise who would listen centuries after he was gone. He had already spoken of wealth, character, power, betrayal, and justice. Now he turned more toward the soul, the inner governance of the individual that ultimately shaped the governance of empires. He believed that an individual who mastered himself needed no master. Just as a lamp requires no sunlight to shine in darkness, the disciplined soul needed no outside validation to act righteously. He taught that spiritual power did not lie in renunciation, but in responsibility. To live fully in the world and yet remain unattached was the highest spiritual state. He had no illusions about human nature. Even in his reflections on Dharma, he was grounded in realism. He wrote that people often speak of truth, yet lie in the name of gain. They speak of nonviolence, yet harm through words sharper than swords. Chanakya did not condemn these inconsistencies. He merely pointed them out and urged the wise to rise above them, not through anger, but through awareness. One of his closing teachings emphasized that true wisdom comes not from listening to flattering words, but from enduring harsh truths. A person who welcomes correction is like fertile soil. It may be torn open by the plow, but only then can it bear fruit. A man who avoids correction remains like a rock, solid, proud, but barren. He said that peace must be cultivated, not merely wished for. Peace was the result of inner clarity, outer discipline, and just action. It was not the absence of conflict, but the triumph of understanding over ego. He encouraged regular introspection, comparing it to a mirror that must be wiped daily, lest dust gather and blur one's self-perception. Chanakya also warned against indulging in too much comfort. Comfort, he said, makes the body soft and the will weaker. Like a sword that rusts when unused, the mind too becomes dull in idleness. He urged people to pursue challenges deliberately so that when life threw unavoidable tests their way, they would already be prepared. He believed in quiet preparation. A person must prepare for winter in summer and prepare for war in peace. Those who waited for danger to act were already half defeated. He advised that a strong man not only defends his fort, but also ensures that the enemy never dares to approach. He saw the world as a chessboard, where every move must be made with the whole game in mind. Short-sighted decisions, made in passion or ego, eventually led to long-term losses. He urged patience, strategy, and above all, control over one's impulses. Among his deepest insights was the understanding that fear often hides behind pride. A person who boasts loudly is often the one most insecure. He taught that confidence does not shout, it whispers. True strength is quiet, reserved, and rooted in truth. Chanakya's warnings against poor company remained consistent throughout his Neeti. He declared that a wise man in the company of fools is like a swan swimming in a pond of crows. He may retain his grace, but he gains nothing. Company, he said, influences thought, and thought shapes destiny. Therefore, choose companions like you choose food, carefully, consciously. He emphasized again that secrecy was power. What a man keeps to himself often protects him more than what he shows to the world. Even in success, he said, speak less, celebrate privately, plan silently, and act decisively. The more predictable one became, the more vulnerable they were to manipulation. He respected the unpredictable mind, but not the unstable one. Flexibility in thought was strength. Inconsistency in character was weakness. A man who changed his values with every situation was like a boat with a broken sail, moved by every wind, but going nowhere. Chanakya was direct about desire. Desire, he said, was like fire. It begins as warmth, becomes heat, and eventually consumes. One must either learn to control it or be devoured by it. He did not preach complete abstinence, but advised moderation. Enjoyment, he said, was safe only when fenced by self-discipline. He acknowledged the importance of luck, but reminded that fortune visits only those who are awake, prepared, and courageous. Even fate, he believed, respected effort. While one cannot control outcomes, one can always control effort, and in effort lies freedom. One of his final teachings addressed legacy again. He said that when a man dies, three things remain: his children, his deeds, and his wisdom. Of these, wisdom endures the longest. A righteous act inspires for a generation, but a wise thought can guide an entire civilization. Therefore, invest not only in work, but in words, because words have wings. He spoke of forgiveness not as weakness, but as control. The man who can forgive without surrendering self-respect is the strongest. However, forgiveness without correction is foolishness. Mercy must be followed by wisdom. To forgive an enemy without removing their weapon is to invite a second strike. He instructed rulers to build their nations on justice, not fear. Fear breeds silence, not loyalty. Justice breeds respect, and respect sustains peace. He said that a king must never let his ministers grow more powerful than his vision, or his enemies more informed than his intelligence network. Even in the structure of administration, Chanakya's wisdom was evident. He emphasized that every role, however small, must be honored, but never left unsupervised. Trust was good, but systems were better. A king who ruled by goodwill alone was vulnerable. One who ruled through systems and checks was strong. He turned his attention also to old age. A man who had lived without discipline, he said, would find old age bitter. But the one who had lived wisely would find peace, even as strength faded. He reminded that the young must heed the warnings of the old, and the old must bless the young not just with words, but with wisdom. He said that the sign of a truly wise person was their ability to adapt without losing their identity. A river flows, changes course, faces rocks, and still reaches the ocean. So must a person flow through life, keeping their essence even as paths shift and seasons change. In closing, Chanakya asked his readers, and those who would one day hear his voice, to walk with awareness. He said that the world was neither kind nor cruel. It simply responded to action with reaction, to cause with effect. The man who understood this became master of his fate, not its slave. He ended not with praise, but with caution. Beware of arrogance when successful. Beware of despair when defeated. Neither lasts. The only constant is character, and character must be forged daily. Chanakya Neeti was never meant to make life easy. It was meant to make life clear. It offered no illusions, only reflections, hard, honest, and enduring. It was a torch for those who walked into the dark not to escape life, but to shape it. And so, his voice, quiet but eternal, remains. The world remembers warriors for their battles, but legends like Chanakya are remembered for their minds. If his wisdom sparked something within you today, imagine what mastering it could unlock. This was Chanakya Neeti, not just a guide, but a weapon for the wise. Subscribe to Thinknova for more ancient power, modern clarity, and timeless strategy. Because at Thinknova, We don't just think, we ignite.